Well, welcome everybody. Thanks for being here. We are going to be talking about exercise today. It looks like you all have done a great job muting your microphones, and you're welcome to unmute for questions along the way, but I'll also save some time for us at the end. And you're welcome to use the chat box if you have questions on a certain slide or a certain topic, and I'll try to moderate that as we go. And then, like I said, we'll always have time for questions at the end. Today I'll be talking about exercise. My name is Christine Morse. I do work with Premier Health and Fitness Center and TMH. I also work with the Metabolic Health Center or the Bariatric Center. So I've helped a lot of people use exercise to lose weight. I think there are smarter ways of going about this. And so my job today is to help you work smarter, not harder necessarily, so that you're using exercise as the most valuable tool you can when it comes to weight loss. This particular chat will be helpful for those that are either beginning and do not know how to use exercise as a weight loss tool, or for anyone that is in a plateau or a rut and needs a jump start. So what we're going to outline today will be most helpful for that. If you are already exercising regularly or have already studied this to any extent, some of this may be review for you, but hopefully we'll come up with something that that sparks interest or gets you where you need to go for weight loss. So without further ado, I'm going to get our PowerPoint started. Let's see if we can get that up. All right. So like I said, my name's Christine. I did get my master's in exercise science, and I've been personal training and coordinating for Premier. I've been at Premier for over 7 years now, and I've been managing the personal training department for about half of that time. And I really love it here. Really excited to be talking about exercise today. The first thing I want you to think about is your plan for exercise, and make sure you can see my PowerPoint at this point. Someone give me a shout if you cannot. Oops, let's back up here. I want you to think about your plan for exercise. So this is going to include especially when is this going to occur and how much time can you devote to exercise. It's also you'll need to take into account how frequently you can do it, and the intensity that you're going to be doing your exercise. That's something we'll talk about in large portion today. And the mode, making sure that especially you are programming for cardio and strength training. Nutrition is a very important component of weight loss. We already know that. So that has to be in place for this to work. And making sure that you're goal oriented. If you have a weight loss goal, that's great, but I often encourage people to have more than just a weight loss goal. Maybe there's something else you're training for as well, like running your first 5K. Making sure that what you're doing is leading you towards your goals. Often I see people exercising kind of aimlessly, and they are not really exercising for a specific purpose. They're just doing it to do it, or just doing it because someone told them to. So make sure you know that your workouts are tailored for weight loss or tailored for 5Ks or whatever your goal may be. And then, of course, I have to add here that if you have any pre-existing health condition that you need to talk to your doctor about, to go ahead and make sure you ask about that. This may be things like medications you're taking and how that's going to affect you when you exercise. It could be a chronic pain or disease, just anything that you think is going to interact with your exercise. You want to make sure you get the okay from them. And like Afaf talked about last week with diet, it doesn't mean your doctor is the expert on nutrition or the expert on exercise in this case. It just means that they may know how your health conditions would interact with that. So I hope everyone's thinking about how this is going to fit into their life as we kind of program this for your weight loss goal. So when we talk about exercise for weight loss, one of the things that we are, the three main pillars here that we're going to talk about today are healthy eating, cardio, and strength. Obviously, there are other things that are incorporated into weight loss, and I've listed those below. So physical activity, any general movement or fidgeting or extra flight of stairs or parking further away, all of those things are still important, as well as attending to your own injuries or tricky areas, anything that kind of flares up. You want to make sure that you're working on preventing injury in that area or rehabilitating that area. Like I get some knee pain or some ankle pain, and so I really want to attend to that so I can keep exercising. Making sure you're managing things like sleep and stress. Those are all important components of wellness. This is a 12 weeks of wellness workshop. So we're going to hit on most of these areas over the next couple months, but making sure that those things are lined up to promote weight loss in the body instead of holding on to weight. And then your minor areas of fitness like flexibility, coordination, and balance. And if you struggle with these may be more major issues or things that need more attention. But for most of us, these are just kind of accessory areas of fitness where maybe we do need to incorporate a few minutes of stretching a day or a couple coordination exercises or a couple balance moves. So all of those are very helpful for things like weight loss, but they're not our three primary objectives, which would be healthy eating, cardio, and strength. So we're going to touch on those three. So you may have heard before that diet or fitness is 80% diet and 20% exercise. I have seen this all over the internet. People love to quote this. I don't know that the percentage actually matters. I just want you to be aware that eating is much, much more important for your overall weight than any amount of exercise. A lot of people will say you can't out exercise a bad diet, right? So you cannot exercise for 3 hours a day in the gym and then go home and eat pizza and fries all day. It will not work. It will not agree with your body, and it wouldn't make you feel really good either. So try to work out really hard with nothing but junk food and heavy food on your stomach. But when it comes down to it, trust your registered dietitians. And I'm really glad I went. I'm giving this presentation after Afaf, one of our registered dietitians on the board, because she is a trusted source for nutrition advice, and make sure that you are going to good sources for your nutrition input. I know there's a lot of fad diets, a lot of trendy diets out there, but making sure that, again, if weight loss is your goal, that you're trusting good sources for weight loss nutrition. One of the big fads right now with nutrition is fasted cardio, or exercising on an empty stomach, basically. And we're seeing that a lot in the fitness industry, which to me sounds a little dangerous. Oops, sorry about that. Sounds a little dangerous to be exercising on an empty stomach, and the science really doesn't support it right now. So I did want to just touch on that. There's not a lot of good research to support fasted cardio as improving your fat loss. But I would recommend having at least a little something on your stomach before you get going. If I have runners out there, sometimes I'll say half a banana before you go out on your run, or just a few sips of juice, or just something to kind of stimulate metabolism before you get going. The other thing I have to remind people about often, if they're trying to lose weight, is to not undereat. So undereating is typically the culprit here. When you're in a rut or plateau, you are not giving your body enough fuel to be able to let go of weight comfortably. And what I've seen with clients before is as soon as we increase their calories a little, their weight starts to drop, which does not sound correct. I know that's counterintuitive, but it often works to get your body out of that starvation mode. And of course, with that, making sure you're getting good post-workout protein. So protein after a workout is is where your protein absorption is the highest. And so I want to make sure you guys are getting a good protein source within an hour or two of a workout, to feed back to the muscles what you've beat up on them a little for. And so remember that the percentage of diet versus exercise does not really matter in the grand scheme of things, but your healthy eating habits, whatever that means for you and your body, must be in place for exercise to be a weight loss tool. Okay. All right, let's talk about cardio. Cardio is our next pillar. So eating is something I can't speak to very, very promptly, but because I'm not a registered dietitian, but cardio and strength training are my areas of expertise. So the minimum that I give people for cardio is at least 4 half-hour sessions a week. I'm sorry, that should say cardio per week. And what we find there is that 4 or more tends to be a good formula for weight loss. 5 is what is recommended by every health organization on the planet. So the American Heart Association, the CDC, the WHO, and the ACSM all recommend 150 minutes a week or 5 30-minute sessions a week. But basically this comes down to daily or every other day. Another way of saying that is near daily. You should be exercising near daily. But when I'm working with people from the bariatric center here in town, I give them a minimum of 4. And the reason for that is most days of the week. So exercise is the rule and not the exception, and rest is the exception. I do have a lot of people out there that try to work out 3 days a week, and they have that 3 days a week dialed in. And I tend to not see good weight loss results from them because it is the exception to the rule, and they're resting more days than they're exercising. And also, I always recommend spacing out your rest days to about every other day, so you're not taking 2 or 3 days off in a row. Sometimes what we see with exercise is people trying to slam the beginning of their week with exercise so that they can skip over the weekend. I have a lot of Monday through Thursday warriors or Monday through Friday warriors, and then they take 2 or 3 days glued to their recliner, and we backslide a little. Our cardiovascular fitness backslides, our resting heart rate gets a little worse, our blood pressure gets a little worse, our metabolism gets a little worse, our cholesterol gets a little worse, our lung capacity gets a little worse. All those things backslide a little every day you take off in a row. And so when you come back for Monday's workout, surprise, surprise, it's really challenging. And so you want to try to space your rest days out, which normally means working out at least 1 day on the weekend. But if this is a time crunch for you, you can always try to make this recreational with other people, family members, get outside and try to mix it up. It doesn't necessarily have to be done in a gym or in the exact same routine that you did your weekday workouts. Now, when we're talking about cardio, we want to make sure the intensity is appropriate for weight loss. And 70 to 85% intensity tends to be a good zone for heart rate. And if you don't have a way to check heart rate, that's okay. We'll use something called the Rpe scale. But that's what we're going to talk about next, is making sure that now you've got the amount of cardio dialed in that you need in a week, and you're eating healthy, whatever that means for you and your body. And now we're going to make sure that that cardio is in the right intensity. So this is a very generic formula for heart rate, but I do want to touch on this because it's a helpful rule of thumb to kind of get you in the right zone. But asterisk here, there is a lot of variability with heart rate based calculations and whatever is going on in your body for that day. So take this with a grain of salt, but if you were looking for a rough rule of thumb heart rate, you could use a very simple formula of 220 minus your age. If you take that number, you would get max heart rate. Now, I don't want you working out at max heart rate. That's actually not conducive to weight loss. That puts you in a very anaerobic state, almost like a strength exercise than a cardio exercise. So 10 out of 10, 100% effort, generally not very good for weight loss. But what I do want you to focus on is about 70 to 80 for 5% of that, right? So 0.7 or 0.85 times that number will give you your range of 70 to 85% effort on your heart. This formula is normally plus or minus 10 beats for you all. So if you find that you can do about 10 beats higher than this range, that's fine. If you find that this is too challenging and you need to go about 10 beats lower, that's also okay. That's the standard variability for this range. But it's just, like I said, just a ballpark. Now, some things that could throw off heart rate variability include your medications. If you are taking a beta blocker, you cannot use this as a guide for effort because your heart rate is being kept low by a beta blocker, which is normally used for blood pressure. Other medications may also tamper with the heart rate or interact with your exercise in a way that it may speed it up or slow it down. So again, make sure you talk to your doctor about that. Stress and caffeine, lack of sleep, illness, all these things can affect heart rate. So you want to make sure that you're not only by the book heart rate training, but that you're aware of your other factors in your life at that time. And working out by feel, it has been shown to be just as good as working out for heart rate. And so that's where we talk about the Rpe scale, which stands for the rate of perceived exertion. And that is, I use the scale of 1 to 10. There are other scales out there. But on a scale of 1 to 10, how hard do you feel like the workout is? And if you're saying 7 or 8, then you're probably in the right zone, or 7 to 8.5 out of 10. So I tell people 1 is like sitting still. 10 is like if a bear is chasing you. That's why I have this bear graphic. If a bear is chasing you, you should be all out, 10 out of 10, max heart rate, right? That's as fast as we can go, running for our lives. But 7 or 8 is more where we should be for workouts. So a lot of times what I see in the gym is people just killing it on the machines. They are going flat out, 10 out of 10 for extended periods of time. And again, that's not the best zone to be in for weight loss. And it is not sustainable. And normally it's so uncomfortable and unpleasant. People don't want to come in and replicate that workout again the next day or week to week. So you want to make sure that 70 to 85% zone is where you're hanging out. All right, so let's talk about interval training next. Cardio interval training means not just getting on your cardio or starting your walk or starting your run or attending a class and going the exact same pace the whole time. Interval training means periods of faster or slower, or periods of higher intensity and lower intensity. Higher intensity can mean faster. It can mean higher resistance, more resistance, like grabbing hand weights. It can mean incline if you're out doing something where there are hills. There are plenty of hills in Tallahassee, so you can definitely use those. What we see with high intensity interval training is this afterburn effect, which is sometimes small, but I want to teach you guys about it in case you had not heard. Why high intensity interval training is very trendy right now, but also really well backed by research. When I was in graduate school, we did a lot of research on interval training, and it was really interesting to see the benefits. So high intensity interval training, if I was going to start you off, I would say start with 30-second intervals every 2 to 5 minutes. This may seem really spaced apart for some of you that are already doing this. You may be doing minute slow, minute fast, minute slow, minute fast, and that's fine. But if you are new to interval training, try 30-second bursts every 2 to 5 minutes. And the goal is to still be somewhat in this range of 70 to 85%. Again, if you were a beginner to interval training, I would have most of your workout at that 70% range, and your intervals will bump you up to 85%. Sometimes people can go up to 90% on their intervals and still feel comfortable. And that is percent max heart rate. Sorry, I use a lot of acronyms. But 70 to 85% back and forth, almost like a ping pong game, is interval training. And that is giving you that afterburn effect, which is also known as EPOC, excessive post-oxygen consumption, I think is what that stands for. It basically means you're demanding more oxygen out of your body through after the workout. And this is in direct contrast to what we would call steady state cardio or steady state adaptation. So if you are one of those people that just gets on the bike or goes for a walk and goes the same pace the whole time, you might be kind of frustrated with your weight loss journey. You might be in a plateau. And I have people tell me all the time, I walk an hour a day, I walk 2 hours a day, and I'm still not losing weight. To which I respond, as a marathon runner, I've done 6 marathons. I have run for over 4 hours at a time and not lost a pound, even though I'm burning well over a pound worth of calories. And the reason for that is your body is trying to adapt to what you're doing. That comes from evolution, right? In order to survive, in order to stay alive, your body is constantly trying to adapt to the stimuli that you're putting on them. And so if you are running for 30 minutes at a time, and then 40 minutes at a time, and then 60 minutes at a time, and then 2 hours at a time, your body is constantly trying to adapt to that stimulus, and it's trying to level off. And so what we see with steady state cardio is normally you go out for a walk or hop on a bike, your heart rate levels off after a period of time, and your body's conserving energy to make it through the workout. And what we see is that does not help us lose weight. So interval training, because it has that kind of yo-yoing, kind of ping-ponging with the heart rate, it is so strange. It's a strange demand to put on the body, and that's where we tend to see weight loss come. So we're going to look at how this works and why this works. I have made some very crude graphs for us to look at today. So the red line is your heart rate. This is an example of steady state cardio. This would be warming up and getting to your exercise pace and cooling down, right? So we see this red line come up, flatten out, and come down. And these charts I have looked at extensively in graduate school and through my research. I just happened to draw these for you, so these don't have any units to them. But your heart rate comes up and levels off. The blue line would be what happens to your metabolism when you exercise, right? Your resting metabolism is what you're burning at rest per hour. Your exercise metabolism is going to be higher. And we know this because everyone who has ever looked at a fitness tracking device knows that they're burning more calories during exercise. So let's say you burn 200 calories during your half-hour bike ride and your metabolism comes up, and then it comes back down and becomes resting metabolism again, or RMR or BMR, your basal metabolic rate. After you've cooled down from that workout, you go back to burning your baseline calories. And if you're not a numbers person, just stay with me here. Last graph of the day coming up here. All right, so interval training or high intensity interval training looks more like this. Look at this red line first. The heart rate is coming up and down and up and down and up and down. You're ping ponging the heart rate from 70% to 85%, back and forth several times in a workout. This is a strange stimulus for the body, and you may have heard the term shock the body. Sometimes we use that phrase to surprise the body with new ways to work out and new demand. And this is constantly keeping the heart rate moving and creating a greater demand. So let's look at the blue line. What we see happen is metabolism comes up and you burn almost exactly the same amount of calories as you would during a steady state workout. But later in the day, and maybe even into the next day, it tapers more gradually. So that yellow block is the afterburn effect, or excess post-oxygen consumption. And so you're burning extra calories later in the day, even into the next day. Again, this may be very small depending on what your efforts are like, but it adds up over time, and you always want it paying off for you while you're sitting and sleeping. That is an excellent way to lose weight, is to have it working for you while you're still. Now, I have read a study that showed people burning 200 to 300 extra calories up to 2 or 3 days after a workout. And the fact that you can have benefit up to 3 days after a workout is mind-blowing to me. It's very exciting science. But those people working out were doing like elite level workouts. So are we all going to have a 3-day yield off of this? Probably not. And are we all going to have a 200 or 300 calorie yield off of this workout? Probably not. But even if you're only getting 50 extra calories out of that workout, it's still worth it. It's still giving you those good metabolic adaptations after the workout. So let's take a moment and move our bodies. We only have a little bit more to discuss before we talk about questions. This is a good time to sit and stand up out of your chair, maybe up and down a few times for me. Maybe give me W arms, so bringing your arms out to your side and letting the elbows pull back slightly for posture, and then a light twist. And I'm going to stop sharing for just a moment here so that I can check the chat while you guys are doing your exercises. Good question. We had a question about the diet workshop. The diet workshop is found on our YouTube page. So if you go to Working Well Tallahassee and go to YouTube, you should be able to find our diet workshop that was held last week. You can also go to workingwelltoday.org and you'll see all of our presentations from past weeks. All right, keep sitting and standing or bringing your arms out to a W shape and pulling the elbows back to fix that posture, or just a light twist from your chair or standing, kind of wringing out the spine. I like to remind people to move when we're doing these seated presentations because I get a little antsy. I feel like we need to shake things up. All right, home stretch on slides here, and then we'll talk more one-on-one. Let's talk about strength training. All right, there are so many ways to slice strength training, and I hate to even give you a generic program for this because people strength train in so many different ways, and I don't follow this exact pattern. My schedule is all over the place, so I get my strength training in where I can, and I work it through probably 5 or 6 times a week because I like to do it in smaller pieces. But basically, when you're putting a strength training program together for weight loss, I want you to think about the 3 main regions of the body: the upper body or arms, the lower body or legs, and the core, which is anything from shoulder to hip, mostly abdominal and lower back and oblique muscles in the waist section, and hitting this at least twice a week. So again, if you're a beginner, twice a week total body strength routine is probably going to set you up nicely as a baseline. Eventually you may build up to 3 or 4 times a week, or you may do what we call split programming, where you're working only certain muscle groups in that day, like leg day, you may have heard, or push day or pull day, or chest and tris, or back and bis, posterior chain. There are so many different ways you can build your strength routine. I'm not too worried about how you're slicing your program, but in general, you want to target each muscle group twice a week for muscle gain, muscle build, firmness, and of course, putting more lean muscle on your body for weight loss. Twice a week is our minimum. Again, I like to start people off with the minimum because it's more attainable. You can do this twice a week. You want to select about 3 to 5 exercises for each of those regions. So 3 to 5 for the arms, 3 to 5 for the legs, 3 to 5 for the core, would be anywhere from 9 to 15 moves total body. And that means you are going to be targeting most of your muscle groups in that workout. And I always start people with 3 sets of 10 unless they have a goal other than weight loss, like a strength or power goal where we may need to lift a little heavier and do fewer reps. I have a lot of people concerned about getting too bulky if they do this, or worrying that they're lifting too heavy, so they pick up these really light 1-2 pound weights. If you can do it 10 times, by definition, it is not a heavy weight. And I know that sounds almost insulting if you're picking something up and it feels heavy, but if you can do it 10 times, it is by definition lightweight, high rep. 10 is a high repetition set, which means that you are struggling against a lightweight for high reps, which is more conducive for weight loss, at least at the beginning as you're laying your foundation for strength training. I use what's called the Goldilocks principle when I'm training people. Is this too heavy? Is this too light? Or is this just right for a set of 10? You could also use the 70 to 85% rule, right? Or 70 to 80% rule. By rep 7 or 8, you should be feeling a good burn. You should know what muscle you're targeting, and you should be ready to take a break at 10. If you pick something up and you can do it 20 or 30 or 50 times, it is too easy for what you are trying to do. Again, there are exceptions to this. There are styles of workouts where you may do a very, very high volume of repetitions. But in general, if you pick something up and you can do it 20 times and you're stopping at 10, it's too easy to build the firm muscle or retain the firm muscle that you're trying to for your weight loss goal. And remember that weight gain, or that firmness in the muscle, the shape, the toning, we use that phrase sometimes, it normally takes at least 2 to 3 months to see this. We've actually looked at photos of quad muscle in the legs, and it takes 8 to 12 weeks for that muscle to start changing in composition and to become stronger and to add muscle fiber to it. So it is an investment. So start now, start today, start yesterday with your strength training. Don't wait to lose weight first and then strength train. You definitely want to be investing in that firm muscle during the process. And the metabolic benefit here is you also get some of that afterburn effect, or that EPOC, or that higher metabolic demand from having lean muscle on your body, which I think most of us know and maybe a little repetitive for you, but remember that lean muscle is also burning calories for you at rest. While you're sitting and sleeping. Now, the last thing I wanted to touch on before we look at questions, and this may bring some questions to you, is the biggest exercise myths I have to talk about on a daily basis. I just want to cover a couple of these, especially the first one. I cannot tell you how many times people have told me that they still think that they can spot reduce fat, meaning if they move their arm this way, they're going to lose arm fat. That is simply not how fat loss works. And if you still believe that, I'm sorry. I'm sorry to break your heart on that, but you cannot spot reduce fat. So, for example, moving the inner thigh machine at the gym does not get rid of inner thigh fat. And lifting for the back of the arms does not reduce fat in the back of the arms. And I say that because these are some areas that I hear all the time. And then, of course, sit-ups and crunches do not do anything for belly fat. They are only strengthening the abdominal muscle, which is still important. And we still want firm back of the arm muscle, and we still want firm inner thigh muscle in all those areas, but it's not affecting the fat in those areas. So what helps us reduce fat? It is our 3 pillars, right? Our healthy eating, our cardio with interval training, and our strength training, building lean muscle all over the body. Unfortunately, we don't get to choose where we lose the fat or how fast or those areas decrease. It's an overall fat loss kind of process. And then the muscle building is very specific, right? We're targeting those areas to get those areas firmer and stronger muscle there. So spot reducing fat, that's one I wish I could just wipe off the myth radar here, because we still are teaching people to stop doing crunches and sit-ups for belly fat. They need to be eating healthier, maybe consulting a dietitian if they're really stuck, and interval training for cardio so they have that afterburn effect and building muscle all over the body. And then the next one here, fat does not turn into muscle and muscle does not turn into fat. I have no idea how this one got started. but people are still telling me that all their muscles turned into fat, or they want to turn their fat into muscle. And that may not be anyone here today, but those are very different compositions. Those are not the same items. They have completely different properties, and they don't turn into one another. You gain or lose fat, and you gain or lose muscle, and you pull different things out of food in order to do that. For example, to gain fat, you generally have to be eating things that get converted into fat. And to gain muscle, we know that protein is one of our building blocks for that. Very different compositions there. Lower abs, I have a lot of people telling me that, again, they want to target that area. That kind of goes back into spot reducing fat. But your abdominal muscle is all one muscle, that front six-pack muscle. It's the rectus abdominis. And we should be moving it in different ways, right? But I tend to get that question a lot. Fat burning zone, if you've heard this, I've basically given you the building blocks for the fat burning zone using that 70 to 85% rule. Some fat burning zones on machines will tell you to exercise at 50 to 60% effort. There is a reason why this comes up in science, and it's pseudoscience. Those machines that are telling you what zone you need to be in. Generally, this is much too easy for you to actually see good fat loss, but technically you are burning fat as a substrate at that intensity, and you're burning carbs as a substrate at higher intensities. That all that means is that your body is handling fat and carbs differently at different intensities. But remember that calories are calories, and if you burn through all your carbs in store, your body's going to break down fat to supply you with energy next. And so the fat loss is generally better at higher intensities than it is at that moderate intensity. LSD versus HIIT, that is not the drug LSD, that is a running term. Some of you who have done endurance events may recognize that as long, slow distance. And we talked about this already. Long, slow distance is something that your body's trying to adapt to, versus HIIT, which is unadaptable. It's constantly keeping your body guessing. Bulky and toned are phrases I hear a lot that don't have a lot of meaning in the exercise community. It is very hard to get bulky without intentionally bodybuilding, intentionally trying to sculpt your body into a bulkier shape. And I always tell people, unless you have natural bodybuilding women in your family, or natural bodybuilding powerlifting people in your family, and your body actually does get too bulky when you work out, you're probably not at risk of that. And toned is just a layperson term that people throw around. What it actually is toning of the muscle, or muscle tone. And that is the tension on the muscle, or how flexed it looks at rest. But that just comes from natural strength training. What people mean when they say toned is generally lower fat, higher muscle, right? So then you can see the curve of the muscle on the body. So you do need fat loss and muscle gain generally to see that toned muscle you're talking about, which again goes back to your cardio and your strength programming. Don't try to sweat out your weight loss. I think Afaf mentioned this last week. That is normally just water, and when you drink water, you put that right back. Even though your scale may read a little lower, that's normally just a dehydrated value, and that's not the same thing as fat loss. I want you to be thinking, if you are aware of any other myths that you have come across, or questions you have about fitness. We have covered everything that I wanted to go over. So now I'm going to stop sharing the PowerPoint and see if you guys have questions. I see there are a lot more in the chat box. So let me greet you all and see what you guys have been asking. Okay, so yes, we are going to be sharing the presentation on YouTube and on our website. This is the 4th in the series. There will be 12 weeks of wellness. So thank you, Mary, for sharing that. And this presentation will also be there. So if you have been furiously scrambling to write everything down, don't worry, you'll have access to the shared screen. And let's see what the next question is here. Do you need this degree of intensity if no need for weight loss? Okay, so if you're here just to learn about exercise, no, you do not need that same level of intensity if your goal is not weight loss. But if your goal is just general health or general stamina, remember that all the health organizations still recommend 5 sessions of 30 minutes a week. at moderate intensity, or 150 minutes a week at moderate intensity. So the American Heart Association, the CDC, the ACSM, they're all saying still get your 150 minutes. They also say you could get this in 75 minutes of high intensity work. So maybe if you're in the 85% range or the 85% zone, you can get by with half the time. But the important thing is they're still recommending about 5 half-hour sessions a week for heart health, for lung health, for bone density, for other aspects of health. So there's almost no one on the planet that doesn't need to be exercising regularly, or at least that amount. Again, 150 minutes moderate or 75 minutes vigorous a week, just for overall heart health, just to keep your heart ticking. If you don't, if weight loss is not a goal, maybe you're doing 150 minutes moderate, maybe you're not interval training, but interval training also helps with heart and lung strength. So I would recommend it for almost anybody. And then we had a question, sweat equals weight loss. That is a myth. That is, so just to clarify, that page of myths is that sweat is not the same thing as weight loss. So sweat is just dehydrating your body. So the scale may be a little lighter after you've been sitting in the sauna, or if you go out and run like Rocky Balboa in a tracksuit, you're sweating. That's not the same thing as losing fat. So I don't want anyone to get in the sauna thinking, oh, this is magic. I just sit still in the sauna and I lose weight. It's just water weight basically. So it's not the same thing as your weight loss goal. When people say weight loss, they generally mean fat loss, right? We want to lose fat. We use those interchangeably sometimes, but sometimes we're losing something that's not fat. Where can you look up these acronyms? You could Google any of these, although if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me. I'm happy. I realize I use a lot of acronyms. So HIIT, high intensity interval training, MHR, max heart rate, EPOC, excessive post-oxygen consumption. If those are a little jargony to you, I wouldn't worry so much about breaking down what they mean, but you can Google any of those. I think those will probably be the first things you come up with. Sorry, just going through the chat questions here. You guys are doing great. How do time recommendations work if you're trying to do flexibility and strength and cardio? So let's start with that one. If you are trying to incorporate flexibility into your routine, what most people find is a little daily goes a long way. I have found this with running, that if I do a little bit of yoga a few times a week, it also promotes good flexibility than having a whole flexibility day. But for other people who like to exercise daily, they may use a rest day for a yoga session or a recovery day, right? So they're going to have their 4 cardio sessions, 4 or 5 cardio sessions, maybe 2 of those strength days built on top of those days. So an example program might be Monday, Wednesday, Friday, Saturday for cardio, Wednesday, Saturday. In addition, you're also doing total body strength. And if you really enjoy flexibility, you may on Sunday, Tuesday, or Thursday on your rest days do full length flexibility routines. But for most of us, 5 or 10 or 15 minutes of stretching or yoga can really be worked into those workouts. So part of this is a programming preference. If you prefer to do a little daily, you may break your flexibility up into your rest days. If you prefer to have workout days and rest days and keep those rest days sacred where you're not working out, you may add your flexibility on top. One more note on flexibility is that a lot of research recently has been saying to stretch after a workout instead of before. So if you have not heard that yet, stretching before a workout doesn't really help you perform better in that workout, with very few exceptions, right? We all have those tricky areas that we need to maybe stretch out or warm up rather. And if you are stretching, dynamic stretching is best before your workout. So that would be like leg swings. A lot of times I'll just swing my legs back and forth before I go for a run, or hike the knees up high and hug them to my chest in a dynamic movement. After your workout is the best time for static stretching. If you haven't gotten into foam rolling is a great way to loosen up the muscles as well. And so those are not really normally time recommended. There's not normally like an amount of time that works, but generally somewhere in the 5 to 15 minute range is enough time to loosen up most muscles of the body. Holding stretches for 30 seconds and breathing deeply, for example, and you could go around and hit most of these. Okay, are there any tools that can be used to keep up with HIIT training, timers, etc.? Absolutely. One of the easiest tools for those of you with access to cardio equipment is the programs on your machine. Now, remember that your machine does not know exactly how you're feeling, but a lot of times they'll ask you to input your age and they'll give you a workout that keeps you in a good zone. I still recommend calculating your heart rate by hand and making sure that your workout on the machine is agreeing with that. Because again, you could get into the trap of hitting a heart rate, a fat burning zone that's not actually a fat burning zone for you. And I do encourage you to stick with the 70 to 85% zone as you're learning what that intensity feels like, because that is almost always a great zone for people who are trying to lose weight. As far as other timers and things, there are tons of apps you can use. There are Tabata apps, if you're familiar with the Tabata high intensity interval ratios, 20 seconds of work, 10 seconds of rest. There are just generic interval timers where you can set the fast and the slow pace. So maybe you want it to beep at you every 2 minutes, so you can go fast for 45 seconds, and then every 2 minutes, and then 45 seconds. There are a lot of free apps out there. But the other thing I tell people a lot of times with timing intervals is don't stress too much about the nitty gritty. If I go out for a run, I'm pretty attached to my stopwatch. So I do generally know when I want to run fast. But every now and then I'll go out without my stopwatch and I'll just do it by feel, right? So I get warmed up 5 or 10 minutes into my run and then pick out, the fourth mailbox or the fifth lamppost there and run fast till you get to there. Or find a hill you can run up every few minutes. And go fast till you get there and then go back to your recovery pace for, let's say, 10 mailboxes. Okay, so you can use landmarks. You can use the music you're listening to. Sometimes I'll have people go fast at the beginning of each song or the chorus of each song and then recover during the verse. You can use audiobooks or regular books or magazines if you're sitting on a bike, right? Every page or every chapter, you give yourself another interval burst. You can do it during commercial breaks. If you're watching TV, that's normally every 5 to 7 minutes. There's a commercial break, and that's a great time to do a burst interval. So however you're out there, if you're not a numbers person, I don't want you to get too hung up on the math here. I am a numbers person, so I really enjoy the numbers behind the exercise. But if this is kind of a headache to you and you think this is not helpful, just try to pick some landmarks in your workout where you can go fast. I hope that's helpful. Is 10,000 steps per day good? I get this question a lot too, because some people think that this is a gold standard for movement. It is a good standard for movement. It does tell you that you've been pretty active throughout the day. So I think I get 13 to 17,000 steps a day, and I have a very on your feet job, and I'm normally running a few miles in the morning. And so I know that that's where my average is. But please keep in mind with step counters that a step to the fridge is a very different step than a step in the middle of running a 5K, right? All steps are not created equal. All steps are not at the same intensity or for the same purpose. You may be just shuffling from your pantry to your living room a few times a day, and that's very different than being in the middle of an interval in the middle of a workout. So is it a good rule of thumb number? Probably, if that works for you, and that's kind of tracking that is helpful for you, that's great. But not a lot of weight loss correlation with steps, because you can get them in so many different ways. And I've participated in step challenges before where I'm literally marching in my living room trying to get my steps higher, or marching in place because I'm trying to hit a number. And that's not the same as working out for weight loss, right? Those intensities, getting the heart rate in the right zone, and getting those intervals and doing your strength routine, not necessarily related to your steps, because a lot of strength is done without stepping, and a lot of intervals are going to be higher intensity than a casual physical activity step. Is static or dynamic stretching better for flexibility? There are a lot of ways to promote flexibility. That's kind of interesting that you guys have that on the brain right now, because flexibility is so important. I would say personal preference would be foam rolling, which is neither. You roll your body out on those styrofoam rolls of foam, and you leave your body in position and just kind of let it rest on the foam roller, and then maybe you kick one leg back up towards your butt while you're rolling your quads out. Those to me dig really deep. Those are myofascial release stretches. They dig deeper into the fascia of the muscle, right? The sleeve. They're not just on the sleeve of the muscle, they actually dig deep. More so than just static or dynamic stretching, which is more like pulling. I always tell people static stretching is like pulling taffy. Foam rolling is like kneading dough. So anything that's going to get in nice and deep in the fascia there is going to feel really good. But dynamic stretching is important because it gives you range of motion, right? So if I'm going to do circles with my arm, I'm working the shoulder joint as well. And so my range of motion is improving. So dynamic for range of motion, static for that pulling, that lengthening, and then foam rolling for that the depth, the deepness of the stretch. I honestly do all three. I do dynamic as a warm up, and then I do static and foam rolling as a cool down. All right, training for a 5K is it good for interval training? Training for a 5K, by the way, I love the questions. Keep them coming. We got a few more minutes. Training for a 5K is not exactly the same as a weight loss goal, so that may be a secondary goal. Interval training, though, is great for both. Interval training for a 5K and interval training for weight loss can both be done in harmony. If I was training you for a 5K, I would want you to practice things like half-mile repeats or 1 mile repeats, where you're going quick for half a mile or quick for a mile and then resting, and then quick for half a mile or quick for a mile and then resting. Or I might have you do 2 minutes slow, 2 minutes fast, 2 minutes slow, 2 minutes fast. If you're walk running, for example, a walk run program, I might have you do 2 minutes walking, 2 minutes running, alternating. It may not be the same intensity as your interval training. It may not be as short as your intervals in high intensity interval training for weight loss. For weight loss, I normally recommend much smaller pieces of intervals because it gets the heart rate up dramatically by about 20 beats in half a minute or 45 seconds. 5K training, I normally try to stretch you out a little, get your endurance a little bit longer. So I would just alternate those kinds of workouts. If you were training for a 5K and trying to lose weight, you would want to be kind of targeting one or the other during workout. Any thoughts about a foam roller versus the stick? The stick is basically just like a portable foam roller. And for those of you that don't know, the stick is literally just like, it looks like a rolling pin with like beads on it or foam on it. And you're literally just rolling pin your muscles. I have actually had clients just use a rolling pin at home, as long as it's one that spins, on their quad muscle or their sides or their neck. So it's kind of funny that I'm so glad you guys know about the stick. It's basically just portable. The foam roller is more on the ground, and so the thing I like about it is I can use gravity as an assistant. But the stick is so portable. We keep one in my dad's truck, so when we go out and do road races, we can roll out before or after a run, so we don't get too stiff in the car. I like them both. I use the foam roller at home a good bit more, but the stick is really handy for things like the shins, when you're trying to roll out the shins, the sides of the neck, some of the smaller muscle groups. It's a little handier. And yeah, go ahead.
I was just going to say that I just got a Hypervolt, and I'll tell you what, that thing is phenomenal. I don't know if you're familiar with it. Do you know what the Hypervolt is?
Is that a Theragun?
I guess you could call it that. Yeah. I mean, they're not cheap, but I'm telling you, I'm saving on going to the chiropractor. I have a lot of neck issues, but I've used it all over. And like, I'll put it on my calf and I go, oh my Lord, I had no idea that muscle was so sore. So
right.
And it just releases like crazy. I highly recommend that, if somebody's really struggling with muscle tightness and doing a ton of training and can afford it. It's Hypervolt, and you can get them at Best Buys. So I think they do the same thing, but probably as a foam rollers.
Yeah, and that was the next question too, is about percussion massagers. So it's like is it electrical, Mary? Like an electrical massage?
You charge it, and then it has about a 3-hour charge. So it runs by charge.
So I've heard nothing but good things about those percussive massagers. That the Theragun, the little beating arm that you can kind of roll up and down the body. I don't have a lot of personal experience with it, but again, anything that the intent is to get deeper into the fascia. Okay, so quick muscle anatomy real quick. You've got fascia of the muscle, and then they're encased in kind of like a I hate to say it, but like a sausage casing, right? There's an encasing. So when you're stretching, you're normally getting on the surface of that muscle. Anything that's deep, like a deep tissue massage, or maybe work with your chiropractor or a foam roller or a percussion massager, is going to get lower, more than just the surface. It's going to get deeper than that encasing and get into all the little fascia in that muscle. So anything that's going to get to a myofascial level is going to feel more thorough, and I am all for it. And again, instead of like pulling taffy, kneading dough is going to be a little safer on that muscle too, because you're less likely to have tears. And anyone that has overstretched, you know that you have torn the muscle a little bit. You know that feeling because it feels like a pulled muscle for a few days. You're like, man, I overdid it. I was trying to do the splits and I went too far. You don't really have that risk as much with percussion massagers or foam rollers or the stick or Theragun. You're going to have more of a deep tissue massage without a risk of tearing. If you have something like bursitis, though, I will say just on the flip side, if you have anything inflammatory, make sure you run that by your doctor, because you may not want to be pushing on that or digging deep on that. That's the only caveat I have. Other than that, I'm a big fan. Anything that's going to help loosen you up and give you greater range of motion and help you be more limber for the next workout is all good. And that is, by the way, why we talk about stretching after a workout more so than before, again, with the exception of dynamic stretching. We often talk about exercising after, or stretching after exercise, because that is helping you be more flexible for the next workout. So when you're stretching, I don't want you to think so much, oh, I've really got to stretch this out in order to exercise. It's really an investment into the next workout. And that's where we see flexibility over time as we practice stretching. It is use it or lose it, but as we practice things like flexibility, it tends to help us be more limber, have greater range of motion overall, as opposed to just for that day. What they were finding with stretching before workouts is that it was overstretching people, and they didn't have enough power. So they looked at it with sprinters first. And what they found is sprinters that stretched before they ran actually ran slower. And so if you think about the muscle like a spring, like a coiled spring, you want that spring to have max power, and you don't want to outstretch that spring right before you're going to go perform on it. And so after the workout, when you're warm and loosened up and you've done your workout for the day, that's when it's good to stretch that spring out. And then it'll coil back up before the next workout and be ready to work powerfully, but you've promoted good flexibility. So that's the theory behind the no stretching before you work out kind of thing. It doesn't mean don't do any stretching. Definitely warm up and do your dynamic movements, but it means that deep stretching is better after. And warm up too. Don't stretch cold muscles. That just sounds painful. Any other questions before we wrap up today? You guys have really kept them coming. You can unmute if you need to, or you can post them in the chat. You guys did a great job running your questions through the chat. I think I was able to get to all of them.
Christine, it's Mary again. I have really come to believe that all movement matters throughout the day. I don't know why. I guess because I was in personal training and taught exercise classes, it never was an issue for me. But now, I've read that even people that fidget a lot, that move a lot are usually thinner people. So, I mean, I went to the gym this morning and I probably got between weight training and cardio, 5,000 steps and, did really well. But I've just stood here the whole time we've been on the phone stepping, and I've gotten another 2,000 steps in while I was listening to you. And I think that, all that going up and down the stairs during the day, all of that matters at the end of the day. Don't you agree?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. I had a slide on this. We just talked about the three major pillars, right? Healthy eating, cardio, and strength. The minor pillars include physical activity, which is non-exercise, or anything under your 70% mark is really what I would consider non-exercise. It's either warm up or cool down, or you're walking to the mailbox, or you're going to Publix, or you parked further away, or you took an extra flight of stairs. All of that is good movement and does promote weight loss. And I have read those studies that say that people who fidget tend to weigh less than those that don't. All those little leg jiggling, leg jangling, that kind of stuff is really good for you for overall metabolic burn and overall caloric burn throughout the day. So it does add up. Absolutely. All movement is good movement. Movement is medicine. Exercise is medicine. It is so good for your body. And we didn't even talk about the benefits to the brain and the body and mental health and the other physical benefits to things like stress levels and depression and anxiety and chronic illness and reducing risk of cancer and all those things that exercise does for you. I know our primary focus today was weight loss, but all that movement adds up and helps you be healthier. So keep moving. That's why I put a little movement break in the middle of the lecture today, because you need to get up every 30 to 60 minutes and give your body some movement, because it's just so good for your overall wellness, which is our objective at Working Well, is to make you more well over time. So I really appreciate you guys coming out. I don't see any more questions on the chat, but thank you for being here, and these will be posted. And if you have any other follow-up questions, be sure to reach out. But thanks for attending today, and have a great day. And don't forget to move today, okay?
Christine, thank you. You did a wonderful job. And I put, Christine, I hope you don't mind somebody wanted your email address. I put that in there if you have any questions for her afterwards, and also the link to the Working Well for all of the four. Hers will be on by tomorrow at the latest, if not this afternoon. So those are all accessible, and all of them in the future will be. And I highly encourage you to continue to watch all these, because they're going to be just as good as this one. But thank you, Christine, for a great job.
I was happy to be here. Have a great day, guys.
Yeah, have a great day, everybody. Bye-bye.